Right now, you feel like a single, continuous person. The same you who woke up this morning is the one reading this sentence. But that feeling might be the biggest illusion your brain ever creates, because the truth is far stranger. Your brain doesn't store your life like a video file. It doesn't have a hard drive labeled me with a perfect recording of everything that's happened to you. Instead, every single time you remember something, your brain rebuilds it. From scratch. Like a sculptor reshaping clay it has used 1,000 times before, and every time it rebuilds that memory, it changes a little. This is called reconstructive memory. The psychologist Elizabeth Loftus spent decades studying this. In one of her most famous experiments, she showed people a video of a car crash, then asked them questions about it. Some people were asked, how fast was the car going when it smashed into the other car? Others were asked the same question but with the word hit instead of smashed. The people who heard smashed remembered the crash as faster, more violent, with more broken glass. Glass that was never there. Their brains had filled in details that didn't exist, and they were certain those details were real. Now think about your own childhood. Think about your earliest memory. Are you sure it happened the way you remember it? Or has it been reshaped, edited, polished by every retelling, every family conversation, every time you thought about it again? Here's where it gets stranger. Your sense of self is built the same way, not from a fixed record, but from a story your brain keeps rewriting. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio described the self not as a thing, but as a process, a constant narration. Your brain is taking in a flood of information every second, sounds, sights, body sensations, emotions, and it's weaving all of that into a single thread it can call me. But that thread isn't a recording of facts, it's an interpretation, a story. And like any story, it has a narrator. Psychologists call this the narrative self. It's the part of you that takes the messy, disconnected moments of your life and turns them into a coherent arc. A beginning, a middle, an ongoing chapter. Without this narrator, your life would feel like a pile of disconnected snapshots. With it, your life feels like a movie, with you as the main character. But movies have editors, and so does your brain. Consider what happens when you fall asleep. During certain stages of sleep, your brain replays the events of your day. Neuroscientists have observed this directly in the hippocampus, the brain's memory hub. But it isn't a simple replay. It's a re-editing session. Memories that seem important get strengthened. Memories that seem irrelevant get faded. Emotional moments get reprocessed, sometimes softened, sometimes amplified. You wake up the next day with a slightly different version of yesterday than the one you actually lived. Do this every night, for years, for decades. And what do you get? A life story that has been edited so many times, the original footage barely exists anymore. Here's a question. If your memories are constantly being rewritten, and your sense of self is built entirely from those memories, then what exactly is the you that's doing the rewriting? This is where the story gets philosophical, but stay with it, because the science backs it up. The philosopher Derek Parfit argued that personal identity isn't a single unbroken thread at all. Instead, he suggested that the you of today and the you of 10 years ago are connected by a chain of overlapping memories, personality traits, and experiences, much like a rope is made of overlapping fibers. No single fiber runs the entire length of the rope, but the rope still holds together. In other words, there might not be a core you sitting somewhere inside your skull watching the show. There might just be the show itself, an ongoing performance with no permanent audience. This idea unsettles people. It feels like it should mean something is wrong or fake, or that you don't really exist. But that's not quite right either. Think about a river. A river has a name, the Amazon, the Nile, the Mississippi. But the water in that river is never the same water twice. It's constantly flowing, constantly being replaced. And yet, we don't say the river doesn't exist. We just understand that its identity comes from its pattern, not from any single drop of water. Maybe you're like that. Not a fixed object, but a pattern. A pattern that persists even as every part of it changes. This isn't just abstract philosophy. It has consequences for how you live. Consider how people often get stuck. Someone might say, "I've always been anxious," or "I've never been good at relationships," as if these were permanent facts, carved into their identity like an inscription on stone. But if your sense of self is a story, constantly being rewritten anyway, then those aren't facts, they're chapters, and chapters can be revised. This is actually the foundation of a major branch of psychology. Cognitive behavioral therapy, developed in part through the work of Aaron Beck, is built on a simple but radical idea. The stories you tell yourself about who you are directly shape your emotions and behavior. Change the story, even slightly, and you change the experience of being you. This doesn't mean your problems are imaginary. It means they're not as fixed as they feel. Now think about the people in your life. The version of your best friend that exists in your head, is that really them? Or is it a character your brain has built, based on years of memories, edited and re-edited, filtered through your own emotions and assumptions? In a way, you don't just tell a story about yourself. You're surrounded by stories. Stories about your parents, your partner, your past mistakes, your future plans. None of these are perfect recordings. All of them are interpretations, reshaped every time you revisit them. So if everything is a story, is anything real? Here's the reframe. The fact that your self is a story doesn't make it less real. It makes it alive. A fixed, unchangeable self would mean you could never grow, never heal, never become someone slightly different from who you were yesterday. The very thing that feels unsettling, the fact that your identity is constantly being rewritten, is also the thing that makes change possible. Every time you learn something new, forgive someone, or see an old memory in a different light, you're not corrupting some pure original record. You're doing what your brain has been doing all along, editing the story, hopefully into a better one. So tonight, when you go to sleep, your brain will quietly sit down with the footage of today. It will trim some scenes, it will soften others, it will decide what matters and what fades. And tomorrow, you'll wake up as a slightly different version of the story, still feeling like the same continuous person you've always been. Because maybe that feeling was never about staying the same. Maybe it was always about the story continuing.